Okay, so it's good to see everyone. Happy sixth day of Passover. Uh, almost done. It depends how you look at it. It's a shame it's almost done, or Yahoo, it's almost done. Can't wait to have a bagel, right? Um, okay, so I have us on page 32 in our edition of Samuel. In chapter 6, beginning with verse 10, that we had read the first verses, um, talking about the plague that happened to the Philistines because they had the ark. Um, right. Okay. And they're trying to figure out, just a second. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Let me just read the first 9 verses in English. And the ark of the Lord was in the country of Philistines 7 months. And the Philistines called for the priests and the diviners, saying, What shall we do with the ark of the Lord? Declare unto us wherewith we shall send it to its place. And they said, If you send away the ark of God of Israel, send it not empty, but in any wise return him return him, that is God, a guilt offering. Then you shall be healed, and it shall be known to you why God's hand is not removed from you. Then said they, what shall be the guilt offering which we shall return to God? And they said, 5 golden emerods and 5 golden mice, according to the number of the lords of the Philistines, for one plague was on you all and on your lords. Wherefore ye shall make images of your emerods and images of your mice that mar the land, and ye shall give glory unto the God of Israel. Peradventure God will lighten his hand from off you, and from off your gods, and from off your land. Wherefore then do you harden your hearts, as the Egyptians and Pharaoh hardened their hearts? When God had wrought among them, did they not let the people go, and they departed? Now therefore take and prepare you a new cart, and 2 milk kine, on which there has come no yoke, and tie the kine to the cart, and bring their calves home from them. And take the ark of the Lord, and lay it upon the cart, and put the jewels of gold, which you return God for a guilt offering, in a coffer by the side thereof, and send it away that it may go. And see if it goes up by the way of its own border to Beit Shemesh, then God has done us this great evil. But if not, then we shall know that it is not God's hand that smote us. It was a chance that happened to us. Okay, so we get the idea. This plague happened to them because they had the ark with them, at least from the perception of the Bible and the author of First Samuel. And so what to do with this? So leading the cart with 2 cows are leading the cart, cows that have calves with them, and they make the calves go away. So the 2 milk cows should follow the calves. That would be the natural maternal instinct, you would think. But if they don't, and if they go to Israelite territory, which would be Beit Shemesh, and as I said last time, if you can picture in your mind's eye a diagonal line from Jerusalem heading south-southeast to the coast, that diagonal line will lead you through Beit Shemesh, and then Kiryat Gat, and then Ashkelon, roughly. Okay, so a straight line as a crow flies. So if they're in Kiryat Gat, it's just a little ways to get to Beit Shemesh. Okay, so that's where we left off. We continue on verse 10. Vaya'asu ha'anashim kain, vayikchu shtei farot alot, vayasrum ba'agala, v'et b'neihem kalu v'bayit. So the men did so, like these diviners instructed. The men did so, and they took 2 milk cows and tied them to the cart, and their children, that is their calves, they kalu v'bayit means they imprisoned in their home, but shut up their calves at home, it says in this Old English, right? They kept the calves back where they got the cows from. 11. Vayasimu et Aron Adonai el ha'agala, v'et ha'argaz, v'et achberei hazahav, v'et salmei techoreihem. And they put the ark of God on the cart, and the trunk, or the coffer, it says here, and the golden mice, and the images of the emeralds. I just want to point out, there's going to be a story later about David getting the ark again, because I think the Philistines capture the ark another time in this history of the battles between the Israelites and the Philistines. And at that time, when David is leading it back to Jerusalem now, the ark totters on the cart, and an Israelite goes to touch it, and the Israelite is struck down, because only the Levites are supposed to touch the ark. But here the Philistines are touching the ark, and nothing is happening to them. So I just think it's interesting. I don't know what to say about it. Why are Philistines allowed to touch the ark, but only Leviim among the Israelites are allowed to touch the ark? So 12, Vayisharna haparot baderech al derech Beit Shemesh b'mesila achat al halchu haloch v'ga'o v'lo saru yaminu smol v'sarnei flishtim holchim acharehem ad gevul Beit Shemesh. And the cows went straight on the road to Beit Shemesh on one path. They were going, and they were, it says here, lowing or mooing. They were going and mooing, and they didn't turn aside right or left. So they just went straight. And the Philistine lords are walking behind them until the border of Beit Shemesh. Beit Shemesh ko tsrim ketzir chitim ba'emek, vayisu et einehem vayiru et ha'aron vayismechu lirot. And Beit Shemesh was reaping the wheat harvest. So it's just interesting. It says that the town is doing this. It means that the people of the town are doing this. And in the valley, so Beit Shemesh, part of it is slightly in the hills, like in the hills of Judea, like leading. So if you could picture coming from the airport, Ben Gurion Airport, to Jerusalem, you're in a coastal plain at that point, and then the road begins to go to ascend, and you're ascending into the Judean hills until you get to Jerusalem. So those Judean hills extend southward quite a ways. So Beit Shemesh is in the foothills leading up there to the higher ground. Yes, go ahead, Bess.
No. Something in 12. Just in 12, the line about ad gavul, it has a double hyphen. Is there a meaning to that?
I don't know. I really don't know about the hyphens between words and why some words have a hyphen between them and some don't. I really don't. It just means that ad gavul has one cantillation mark under it. So it just means that the two words together are sung as the one cantillation mark. But why that happens sometimes and other times not, I don't know. So the people of Beit Shemesh are reaping the wheat harvest in the valley, and they lift up their eyes, they look up, and they see the ark, and they were happy to see it. Ve'ha'agala ba'a el Sidei Yehoshua Beit Hashimshi v'ta'amod sham v'sham even gedola v'yevak'u et atzei ha'agala ve'eta parot he'elu ola ladonai. So the cart came to the field of Joshua of Beit Shemesh, or Joshua the Beit Shemite. We don't know who this guy is, but clearly the author of First Samuel does. So the cart came directly to Joshua the Beit Shemite's field and stood there. And there was a big stone, or a big rock, or a boulder. And they cut up the wood of the cart, and they cut up the cows. No, and the cows they offered as a burnt offering to God. So the Even Gedolah, this big stone there that's in the field of Joshua of Beit Shemesh, was used as the altar. They take the wood of the cart and use that as kindling, and they then slaughter and offer up the cows as an offering to God. Now, interesting that they're doing it there and not bringing it to Shiloh, where the Mishkan is. That would be a further trip. I mean, that's another day or so of travel to get to Shiloh, but it's just interesting to me that they were doing this right there on the spot. Yes, Dov.
Where was Shiloh in relation to the entire Jewish people as they had settled into the northern and southern?
Yeah, well, Shiloh is kind of centrally located within the land of Israel if you take the land of Israel from the Golan Heights to Beersheba. Okay. So Shiloh is in what's the West Bank today, and the West Bank is kind of centrally located, like central at the heart of the land of Israel. Okay. So that's where it is. And Beit Shemesh is in the southern part. It's not as far south as Beersheba, but it's getting there. And so it would have been a longer travel, but you would just imagine if the book of Deuteronomy says that there should only be a central shrine where the offerings are offered. That's what the book of Deuteronomy says loud and clear. And clearly, Joshua, at the beginning of Joshua, you have that, but in Judges and now in Samuel, it's not necessarily the case. So here they are, it's like the default position should be, oh, the ark is here? Let's go to Shiloh. And now let's break apart this cart and use that as the wood for the kindling, and let's offer the cows there and bring the ark back to the Mishkan. Why do this celebration here? We'll see if Alter says anything about it or the commentary says anything about it. It's just that this is what comes to mind for me.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. 15. V'haleviim haridu et Aron Adonai ve'et ha'argaz asher ito asher bo chalei zahav vayasimu el ha'even ha'gedolah ve'anshei Beit Shemesh he'elu olot vayizbechu zevachim bayom hahu ladonai. So the order here is kind of out of order. They said that they took the wood of the cart and used that to then offer up the cows. But in order to do that, you need verse 15 to come first, which says the Levites lowered the ark of God and the trunk or the coffer that was with it, that had in it the golden vessels, and they put it on the large rock. And the people of Beit Shemesh offered burnt offerings, and they offered sacrifices on that day to God. So I think part of 15 had to go first. In order to break apart the cart, you had to take the ark off of it. And that's why the Levites are doing it. Like I said, only the Levites are allowed to touch the ark. Okay, so they take it off, and there are plenty of sacrifices that people are bringing in celebration. 16, V'chamisha sarnei Philishtim ra'u vayashuvu ekron bayomahu. And the 5 Philistine lords watched or saw, I guess from a distance, from their side of the border, and they returned to Ekron on that day. Okay, so let's look at the commentary on these verses, back to the bottom of 32. Along the highway, Hebrew along one highway without attempting to deviate from it. Lowing as they went, an indication that the kine took the opposite direction, although they yearned for their calves. Okay, so I guess the mooing or the lowing would indicate that they wanted to go back to find their calves, but they're moving against their will in the other direction. They of Beit Shemesh were reaping. At harvest time, all the inhabitants of the village would go out into the fields. Rejoiced to see it, Rashi comments, in the intensity of their joy, they treated the ark irreverently. See verse 19, which we'll get to. And the cart came. The order of words in the Hebrew suggests a pluperfect, and the ark had come. They cleaved the wood, an extemporized offering. See 2 Samuel 24 for another example. Bottom of 33, a burnt offering. The Talmud and Jewish commentators explain that after the desolation of Shiloh, sacrifices were permitted at high places. As there was no central sanctuary, the law of Deuteronomy 12:10, that all sacrifices were to be offered only in the place which the Lord your God shall choose, was temporarily suspended. The desolation of Shiloh, did that happen with the war with the Philistines in the previous chapter? I don't remember that Shiloh was devastated. Okay, but maybe Alter will refer to that. And the Levites took down. Better, now the Levites had taken down. As Beit Shemesh was a priestly city, Levites appears to be used here in a general sense to mean members of the tribe of Levi, not in its technical sense of Levites as distinguished from priests. Oh, so maybe it was Kohanim who did it. Okay. Burnt offerings, sacrifices, in addition to that mentioned in verse 14. Okay, let's look at Alter on these verses. We're on page 268 in Ancient Israel. Just 1 second here. The ark of the Lord and the chest and the golden mice and the images of their tumors. This whole scene has a certain grotesquely comic and incongruous effect. Israel's most sacred cult object drawn in a cart by 2 cows with swollen udders, and alongside the ark, golden images of vermin and tumors. Straight on the way to Beit Shemesh, on a single road they went, and they veered neither right nor left. Against the spareness and swift efficiency of normal Hebrew narrative style, the writer here lavishes synonyms and repetitions in order to highlight the perfect geometry of the miracle, against all conceivable distractions of biology or sheer animal unknowingness. The cows pursue an arrow-straight northwest trajectory from Ekron to Beit Shemesh. Lowing as they went, this small but vivid descriptive detail is an even more striking exception to the stringent economy that governs biblical narrative. The last thing one would expect in a biblical story, where there is scant report of the gestures of the human actors, is a specification of sounds made by draft animals. The point, however, is that the milk cows, more driven by the ark than hauling it, are going strenuously against nature. Their udders full of milk for the calves they have been forced to leave behind. They mark with maternal lowing their distress over the journey they cannot resist. There is a peculiar resonance between this episode and Hannah's story of chapter 1. There, too, a nursing mother does not want to be separated from her young, and as we noted, special emphasis is placed on the physical acts of nursing and weaning. The connection between the two episodes is underscored in the Hebrew, which literally calls the cows' young their sons, not their calves. In both stories, sacrifices offered after mother and young are separated. Here, of course, the mothers become the objects of the sacrifice. In Hannah's story, it is a bull, and in symbolic rather than literal fashion, the son as well. Though all these correspondences seem too pointed to be coincidental, it's unclear whether they represent the literary artifact of the redactor or an allusion by the author of the Samuel story to the ark narrative. So it's fascinating. It's Robert Alter, being an English professor by training, uses that training to help understand the literary nature of the Bible itself. And so helping us, reminding us about the first story of Hannah and the birth of Samuel, and some of the things that are happening in that story that happen here with these milk cows. So it's just an interesting literary device that the author of the book of Samuel is using. The men of Beit Shemesh were harvesting. The Hebrew uses an ellipsis. Beit Shemesh were harvesting. The cows they offered up. One connection between the ark narrative with its concern for sanctity and the Samuel, Saul, David cycle with its preoccupation with politics is a kind of brooding sense of the cruel price exacted for dedication to the higher cause. The milk cows are burned on the improvised altar. Hannah and her son Samuel must be separated in his dedication to the sanctuary. And later, both Saul and David will pay terrible costs in their personal lives for their adhesion to power. Okay, so we go on in the Hebrew. We'll read now 17 to the end of the chapter. Just 1 second here. Okay. Ve'ele techorei hazahav asher heshivu Filishtim asham ladonai la'ashdod echad la'aza echad la'ashkelon echad la'gat echad la'ekron echad. And these golden emerods, which the Philistines returned as a guilt offering to God, was for Ashdod 1, Gaza 1, Ashkelon 1, Gat 1, and Ekron 1. 18, V'achbarei hazahav, mispar kol arei plishtim lechameshet hasranim, me'ir mivtsar v'ad kofer habrazi, ve'ad avel hagdola, asher hinichu aleha et aron Adonai, ad hayom hazeh, biste Yehoshua beit hashimshi. And the golden mice, numbering for the cities of the Philistines, for the 5 lords, from fortified city to far-flung village, and by Avel the great stone, where they had put the ark of God until this day in the field of Joshua of the Beit Shemite, Beit Shimshite. Belongs to 4 brother. On to okay. 19. Vayach ba'anshe Beit Shemesh kira'u ba'aron Adonai. Vayach ba'am shiv'im ish, 50,000 ish. Vayit ablu ha'am ki hika Adonai ba'am makah gedolah. And God smote the men of Beit Shemesh because they were looking at the ark of God, and he smote there 70 and 50,000 men. And the people mourned because God had smote a huge had struck the people with a great strike or a great slaughter. Okay, so the fact that they were doing this with the ark and celebrating around it, God punished the people for that with this great slaughter. 50,070 people killed. Vayomru anshe Beit Shemesh, mi yuchal la'amod lifnei Adonai Elohim hakadosh hazeh, ve'el mi ya'aleh me'aleinu. And the people of Beit Shemesh said, who can withstand or stand up to God, God who is the holy God, this holy God, and who will go up for us, like to protect us from this God. Vayishlachu malachim el yoshvei Kiryat Ye'arim lemor, Heshivu plishtim et Aron Adonai, Ridu ha'alu oto aleichem. So they sent messengers to the people of Kiryat Ye'arim, saying, the Philistines have returned the ark of God. Come down and bring it back up to you. Okay, so let's read the commentary on this.
They don't say don't look at the ark.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. We'll see as the story continues in the next chapter what's going on here.
Jonah?
Yes, Barry.
Nobody comments on the golden mice and golden hemorrhoids or tumors.
Right.
That's not. It's
it's
almost like a.
Like idol worship.
Yeah, or like, it doesn't seem like the kind of god or gold that they would, if they respected.
Right, but it is a symbol of what the plague was on the Philistines for taking the ark, the mice or the hemorrhoids. So it's just making a golden image of that thing that came from God to smite them. So I guess the thing that came from God becomes holy, even though it had killed the Philistines. The thing itself becomes holy and becomes an image of God. But I don't know. I can't say anything more about it. I agree. It's bizarre. Okay, so let's look at the commentary below on page 33, fortified cities, country villages. It would seem that the proposal of the Philistine priests had not been strictly followed, and a larger number of mice had been sent than they had suggested. 34, even unto Avel, etc., an extremely difficult sentence. The translation of AJ suggests the meaning, that the villages of the Philistines extended to Avel, a place near the great stone. But it's achieved only by supplying the word stone twice, where it's not found in the Hebrew text. The Targum, the Aramaic translation, translates Avel as if it were Even, a stone, and Rashi suggests that by paranomasia, Avel, mourning, was substituted for Even because of the calamity which befell the inhabitants of Beit Shemesh. Modern scholars amend the text. So we'll just see what Alter does in his commentary on this with the unusual Hebrew. Okay? The plague and the removal of the ark, gazed upon. That is, stared at it with idle and irreverent curiosity. Kimchi explains the sin as that of opening the ark and looking into it. 70 men and 50,000 men. The Hebrew reads 70 men, 50,000 men. Because of the absence of the conjunction, there's a rabbinic comment that the meaning is 70 men, each of whom was worth 50,000 men. It's difficult to believe that the village of Beit Shemesh contained more than 50,000 inhabitants, and verse 21 implies that the news of the return of the ark had not spread and brought in others from a distance. Josephus and some Hebrew manuscripts omit the words 50,000 men. Gordon's theory is interesting. He suggests that the plague which smote the inhabitants of Beit Shemesh had reached them by infection from the Philistines, that it killed first 70 inhabitants of Beit Shemesh, and then spreading abroad through the country, 50,000 of the rest of the people. Right, so it's just based on the unusual Hebrew here, 70 men, 50,000 men. It should be 70 men and 50,000 men if it's going to be 50,000, 70 people altogether. So the fact that there's no letter Vav in between the 70 men and the 50,000 men leads to these comments.
Rabbi, do you
Yes,
think there's any correlation between this 50,000 and the 50,000 that the Hebrews lost, the Israelites lost in one of the days of battle?
Yeah, it could be. It could be. Yeah, it's just a standard number, maybe, of if you want to say a lot of people were killed, say 50,000. I really don't know. I really don't know. Stand before the Lord, that is, minister to him. Since he is a holy God, only duly qualified men, priests and Levites, could attend upon the ark. Page 35, Kiryat Ye'arim. Its site has not been identified with certainty. Some authorities connect it with Kurbet Urma, 4 miles east of Beit Shemesh. It was probably chosen as being the nearest place of importance to that town. Come ye down. Kiryat Ye'arim was in the hill country of Judah, on higher ground than Beit Shemesh. Okay, so let's read altar now on the rest of this chapter. Bottom of 269, and these are the golden tumors. The introductory formula suggests a kind of ritual or epic catalog, so that we know there is in fact one golden image corresponding to each of the 5 Philistine towns, just as the soothsayers had stipulated. The golden mice were the number of all the Philistine towns. This appears to contradict the explicit directions in verse 4, that there should be exactly 5 golden mice. Kimchi resolves the discrepancy by proposing that in the event, as added insurance for all the villages, since the mice had overrun the fields, the Philistines went beyond their instructions and fashioned multiple images of the mice. And the great stone. The Masoretic text reads Avel, brook or meadow, instead of Even, stone. But both the Septuagint and the Qumran scroll have the latter reading. So instead of Aleph, Bet, Lamed, they have Aleph, Bet, Nun. The Masoretic text also has and to, Va'ad, preceding this word, but that's probably an inadvertent scribal duplication of the preposition that occurs twice before in the verse. 50,000 men. This figure makes no sense because Beit Shemesh was a small agricultural village. It appears in all the ancient versions, but Josephus seems to have possessed a text in which only the much more plausible number 70 appeared. The fact that the Hebrew has no indication of and between 70 and 50,000 is further evidence that the latter number is an intrusion in the text. A great blow. As in chapter 4, verse 8, the Hebrew for blow can also mean plague. If there's a historical kernel to this whole story, an epidemic ravaging the Philistines could have easily spread to the bordering Israelites, perhaps even through the agency of the cart and the ark. 271, who can stand before this holy Lord God? Throughout the ark narrative, including what may be its epilogue in 2 Samuel, runs an archaic sense of God's sacred objects as material precipitates of an awesome and dangerous power. This notion led Leonhard Rost, one of the earliest scholars, to argue for an entirely distinct ark narrative, to assume that the author must have been a priest, though that is hardly an inevitable inference, as these attitudes were widely held in ancient Near Eastern cultures. The phrase stand before means idiomatically to serve. Will he go up? The Hebrew could equally be construed as will it go up, referring to the ark. From the point of view of the terrified speakers, it may amount to the same thing. And they sent messengers to the inhabitants of Kiryat Yearim. There seems to be no question of sending the ark back to Shiloh, which has led to the scholarly inference that the Shiloh sanctuary was destroyed in the wake of the defeat at Aphek. The destruction of Shiloh is in fact attested in other sources. Okay, so with the book of Samuel isn't telling us about the destruction of Shiloh, but that must have been the case because they're not returning it there. So they don't know what to do with it without a home for the ark. Okay, let's go on in chapter 7 as the story continues. We can read the first 4 verses. Vayavo'u anshe Kiryat Yearim vaya'alu et Aron Adonai vayaviu oto el Beit Avinadav bagiv'ah ve'et Elazar beno kidshu lishmor et Aron Adonai. So the people of Kiryat Yearim came and brought up the ark of God and brought it to the house of Avinadav in the hill, or on the hill, and Eleazar his son, and they sanctified Eleazar his son to take care of the ark of God. Now, it just so happens that Avinadav and Eleazar happen to be names of the sons of Aaron from the Torah, so maybe they are Kohanim, I don't know. Or who are these Avinadav and Eleazar? We don't know. We'll see. Maybe the commentary will say something about that. 2, Vayehi miyom shevet ha'aron b'kiryat Yearim, vayirbu hayamim, vayihiyu esrim shana, vayinahu, or vayinahu kol Beit Yisrael acharei Adonai. So, from the moment that the ark sat in Kiryat Yearim, it stayed there many days, 20 years. And the people of Israel yearned after God. 3. Vayomer Shmuel el kol Beit Yisrael, lemor, im b'chol levavachem atem shavim el Adonai, hasiru et Elohei hanechar mitochachem, ve'ha'ashtarot, ve'hachinu levavachem el Adonai, ve'ivduhu levado, ve'yatzel etchem miyad plishtim. And Shmuel said to all of the house of Israel, if it's truly in your heart that you are returning to God, then get rid of the foreign gods from your midst and the Ashtarot, and prepare your hearts to God, or dedicate your hearts to God and worship Him alone, and God will save you from the hand of the Philistines. Vayasiru b'nei Yisrael et ha'be'alim ve'et ha'ashtarot vayavdu et Adonai levado. And the people of Israel got rid of the Baalim and Ashtarot, and they served God alone. So, the commentary here, bottom of 35, sanctified not as priest, but as guardian of the ark. The Targum has appointed, see my consecrated ones used of warriors in Isaiah 13, where the sense is virtually my appointed ones. Although Kiryat Yearim remained the home of the ark for many years, it could not take the place of Shiloh as the national sanctuary. First, because it was too near to the Philistine frontier, and secondly, because during the period of Philistine rule, it was unlikely that the Israelites would have been permitted to establish a central place of worship. Most modern commentators find it impossible to reconcile this story of a miraculous deliverance from Philistine rule, related in the present chapter, with the evidence of complete subjection to the Philistines, which can be adduced from subsequent chapters. And their theory is that this narrative must have been taken by the compiler of the book of Samuel from a source other than that used for the history contained in later chapters. We read in verse 13 that the Philistines came no more within the border of Israel, and the hand of the Lord was against the Philistines all the days of Samuel. Yet we find the Israelites groaning under their oppression in chapter 9, verse 16, a general disarmament of the nation by them in chapter 13, and 3 invasions of the country by their armies in 13, 17, and 23, all in Samuel's lifetime. Kimchi overcomes the difficulty by explaining the phrase all the days of Samuel as referring only to the period of Samuel's active judgeship. In that case, we may conjecture that the Philistines reestablished their ascendancy in his old age in consequence of the weak and corrupt government of his sons. All right, so in other words, we're trying to figure out how this story might seem to say that there is peace and reconcile that with other references that we're going to have soon to the constant battles and subjugation at the hand of the Philistines.
So Jonah, even though there hasn't been any conversation, I mean, there was the battle. They got the Holy Ark, which made their gods lose its hands and fall on the ground. It doesn't say yet that that the people were subjected. It just said that they lost the battle and the Ark was taken. But this is implying. I mean, I guess this
we have later. What the commentary is pointing out is that in a couple of chapters, we're going to see that the Philistines are in charge again.
And so there's also the implication that while the Philistines were in charge, the Israelites adopted their ways again, with adopting their gods.
We don't know. What it seems like is that there are 2 different stories going on. We have this story that says that the ark was saved and the people gave up the other gods, and they are free to serve the God at the ark for 20 years. But then we're going to see, well, wait a second, it's still Samuel's lifetime, and Philistines are ruling again, and the Israelites are under their sovereignty. So how does that make sense? That's what the commentary is trying to figure out here. Okay, so the bottom of 36, it was 20 years. The traditional Jewish chronology treats this period of 20 years as the length of the total sojourn of the ark in Kiryat Yearim from the day it was taken there from Beit Shemesh until its removal by David. While the events of this chapter, the repentance of Israel, the victory of Ebenezer, the beginning of Samuel's judgeship, are considered to have taken place almost immediately after the return of the ark. But this chronology telescopes the history of Samuel's judgeship, that of his sons, and the reign of Saul into an almost impossibly short period, and it's better, therefore, to follow Ralbag in one of his interpretations and understand the 20 years as the time which elapsed before the Reformation recorded in this chapter. See also the chronological note in the introduction. The period passed over in silence was one of complete depression. Politically, the Israelites were the vassals of the Philistines. Religiously, they sank into gross idolatry. It was only the influence of Samuel, steadily and diligently fulfilling his prophetic office, that kept a spark of religious and national feeling alive. And Samuel's unrecorded labors in this dark period of Israel's history were as productive as the statesmanlike part which he played later in the foundation of the monarchy. Yearned after. The root meaning of the Hebrew word naha is to mourn or lament. Literally, the phrase means mourned or sighed after the Lord. Foreign gods, that is the Baalim. Baal was the supreme male deity of the Phoenician and Canaanite nations. Ashtaroth, plural of Ashtoret, Greek Astarte, the female deity corresponding to Baal. The plurals Baalim and Ashtaroth refer either to the many images of these gods or to the different forms under which they were worshipped in various localities. Okay, so let's see what Alter has to say about this. Just 1 second. Okay. First. So this chapter, 272, this chapter, which offers a summary account of Israel's religious reformation and military ascendancy under Samuel's rule, serves as a bridge between the ark narrative and the great narrative of the founding of the monarchy that will occupy the rest of 1 and 2 Samuel and the first 2 chapters of 1 Kings. 20 years. This is half the formulaic figure of 40 years that recurs so frequently in the book of Judges. The period of 20 years could refer to the time until David brings the ark up to Jerusalem, though given the immediate narrative context, the more likely reference is the time until Samuel assembles the tribes at Mitzpah. During this period, the presence of the ark at Kiryat Yearim inspires the people to cultic loyalty to God. Was drawn after, the Hebrew yinahu is anomalous. The usual meaning of this verbal root, to weep, makes little sense here, though it was followed by the King James translators. The present translation adopts the proposal of Rashi, who may simply have been interpreting from context. The Hebrew could also be a scribal error for yinharu, which clearly means to be drawn after. With your whole heart, this phrase, and Samuel's language here in general, is notably Deuteronomistic, and the narrative line in this chapter follows the Deuteronomistic theological assumption that cultic faithfulness leads to military success. Neither this language nor this assumption is much in evidence in the main body of the Samuel, Saul, David narrative. Ashtaroth, the form, is a feminine plural of Ashtoret, the Canaanite fertility goddess. The plural either indicates a plurality of goddesses or, more likely, the multiple icons of Astarte. And then Baalim, this is the masculine plural of Baal, the principal Canaanite male deity. Okay, let's stop here for today. I wish everybody a Moadim L'Simcha as we enjoy the rest of Passover. Shabbat Shalom and Chag Sameach, and see you all next Friday. Take care.
Shalom, Hag Sameach.
Shalom. Hag Sameach.